All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of This Week in Photo. This is a historic episode. We've been doing this show. I'm not all that good at math, so I don't want to break it down, but it's been like 6 years. We're at like the 400th episode of this show. Like 400 episodes. You got to get your brain around that. So it's been 400 episodes since Alex Lindsay and Scott Bourne sat down and had a baby, and it was TWiP, right?
Wow.
Well,
and I adopted it. And
I don't like the visual I'm getting on this.
Well, and before that, there's really been 400.75. There was like two of them that didn't get quite out the gate. I don't want to keep on taking the baby metaphor down the right, but there's two of them. So Frederick and Ron and I think we tried like one side didn't record and then one failed completely. So it was there were a couple false starts before we actually got one out the gate.
Yes, there was. I remember all kinds of stuff. I remember being down in LA trying to record this thing with zero bandwidth and it dropping out. And remember we tried to do the double header thing, which never worked quite right. For the audience that's listening, double header is when you
double ender.
Double ender. Yes, that's a whole different party. So double ender is when everybody that's in the show records their audio and video separately, or in the case back then, we were just doing audio.
Just audio, yeah.
Record your audio separately, and then one person gets all the audio files, and then they assemble it, with the theory being you always have the best quality audio you possibly can. The issue is bandwidth, logistics, and all that other stuff of getting all the files together, right?
Now, guys, was I on the first show? Because I remember being at Macworld, and I was sort of minding my own business, and somehow I ended up on TWiP. And then the rest was history. Was that when the first show?
I think it was the first show.
Yeah.
I do believe you were in show number, the official show number one. I think that Macworld had somehow given me a stage, to work with.
Right.
And I was completely unprepared. So it was like me just kind of like wobbling around. And then I think Scott, talked to you and just said, why don't you get, let's collect some people and start making a show,
Exactly.
Who do we know that's a good photographer?
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Actually, I think it was more of a conversation like, there's no photographers on the show. We better get at least one.
Exactly.
Photography show.
Oh, man. I can already tell this show's going to go off the rails, but it's good. I want to go completely off the rails. That's the whole point of it. But let's keep a little bit of structure in here. I want to go down the list and just sort of find out what you guys have been up to, because I think it's the first time in several years that we've all been in the same room again together. So I want to catch up with you guys, see where you're at, and then we'll just kind of dive into the show proper. Let's start with Aaron Mailer. Aaron Mailer, you're historic TWiP alum, back on the show. First of all, tell us how you got involved with TWiP to begin with, and then what you're up to now.
Okay, I started actually as a listener through some of Alex's shows as well, and I fell into writing show notes for Scott Bourne. And I think what happened was I was talking with Alex and Scott kind of with our show note type of stuff for a while. And I had a connection where I got Joe McNally on the show. And it was when I got Joe on the show, I think Alex said, hey, do you want to start producing? So I started kind of doing the producing work behind the scenes for a long time. And then I ended up on an episode here and there. And then I started kind of co-hosting with you guys for a while. And, so it just kind of snowballed at that point.
Yeah, and it worked, right? So what are you up to now? What's going on? I know last time we chatted, you were like heavy into UAVs, UASs, drones, whatever the politically correct term is.
So a lot of people know, if they used to listen to the show when I was more involved back in the day, I'm the not the pro photographer of the group. So I do a lot of freelance work and things like that, and have done a lot of work for hire over the years, but my main career is a network guy. So I'm actually very much a geek day in and day out for a small college in Virginia. And so I'm always kind of pursuing my interests. So drones were definitely a photography thing, but they're also an electronics thing for me. It was just another thing to kind of get my head into, and that's led to getting into small circuit design and microelectronics and stuff in the last couple of years too. So just following my interests all the time. And
one day I want to see a picture of your workshop one day, because I have a feeling you have like a Tony Stark workshop in the basement there.
I wouldn't put it at Tony Stark levels, but I have a lot of fun toys here. Let's put it that way.
Love it. All right, moving down the line, Mr. Steve Simon. You heard his voice earlier.
Hey.
Man, you like we said, you got some history with TWiP, man.
That first one back at Macworld, I think it was in black and white. I mean, it was a long time ago.
It was.
And, time goes by and, nobody's changed. Everybody looks pretty much the way I left them.
Yeah.
But no, everything's great. The TWiP has been such an amazing experience because I remember when I was on more frequently, I was constantly, people would come up to me and talk about the show. Once I was recognized on a plane from my voice. I mean, talk about, becoming a TWiP celebrity.
Yeah.
But it's been a while since I've been on, so it's great to be back with you guys.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to have you. Yeah, you have that voice. And I remember you telling me about you, like there was like a mob of people at one of these shows that was chasing you, yelling Steve Simon or something, right?
Yes, exactly. That happened, twice, 3 times a week.
Ripping clothing off and all that. Yeah.
Exactly. Now it happens to you, Fred, I'm sure.
Doesn't
on
happen
a daily basis.
I don't leave the house. That's, I'm a recluse. That's it.
Yeah. No, it's been great. It's been a while. And you want to know what I've been up to?
Yeah, absolutely.
I've kind of reinvented myself as a street photographer because I've noticed that one of my real weaknesses was that I wasn't shooting enough. And I know that every time I go out to shoot, I always come back with stuff. I mean, it's not always 5-star, but it's new material. And, street photography is what I first got into. And now that I've been doing it again, it's my excuse to go out wherever I am and start shooting. So I'm really starting to get a whole new body of new work. I've got a couple of street photography workshops that I've scheduled for here in New York City in May and June. Probably do a street photography book, and my pick of the week also is going to reflect street photography. So I'm back on the streets, so to speak, with my camera.
That's awesome. You can take the boy off the streets, but you can't take the streets out of the boy.
Exactly.
You gotta come back on, man, because we're doing a lot of stuff in the street photography area on this TWiP network thing that evolved, right? So.
Well, I'm here. Happy to be back anytime, for sure.
Love it. All right, moving down the line there, Mr. Ron Brinkman, the voice from Southern California, probably barefoot right now. What's going on, Ron?
You know me well. I'm barefoot. I am wearing pants, though. So.
Oh, thank you. We appreciate that.
Yeah, it's as mentioned, I was not on the first episode of TWiP, but I was on the 2 before that. And it's been a while though since I've been on. So.
I know. How did you get involved with the show? Like, did Alex or Scott just call you, or what was the impetus?
Honestly, I think Alex has been doing a lot of these podcasts, and I think tell me if this is right, Alex, but I think I dropped you an email saying we should do a photography podcast, and you were like, "I'm already on it." So
that sounds like Alex.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the idea was already there, but I just kind of underlined it a little bit, and. We tried those first 2, and then I was on a lot, especially in the early days. I was another non-professional photographer, at least not in the true photo sense of the word, although I do a lot of photography-related stuff with other things I'm involved with. Yep.
You're the consummate entrepreneur. You've done apps and all kinds of stuff in the time that I've known you, right?
Yeah, so I'm still spending a lot of time in the app world. We're developing kind of changed from doing apps specifically to we're working on some framework tools for other app developers. So if anybody's listening as an app developer, especially like a photo related app, get in touch with me because I want to pick some brains and talk to them. So.
Oh, I have a person that's actually helping with an upcoming TWiP app, so I'll put you in touch with him.
That's good. Yeah, I definitely want to talk to people that are doing apps because we're doing some framework tools to make life easier for everybody. So,
very cool. Well, welcome back to the show. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
All right, and last but not least over there, Mr. Alex Lindsay, the man behind planting the seed of TWiP. What's going on, Alex?
Oh, I'm here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, or outside Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I think it's below 0.
It is not that in California. I'm just
my poor Southern California wife has had to relight the pilot 3 times today. She's not happy with me.
I'm not laughing, but I am kind of a little bit.
There's a whole lot of what did you get me into here, So,
but you have a lot of snow-covered land, though, right?
There is a lot of land out here. There's some cold cows. They're very upset about how cold it is here. There's some cats that are upset that it's cold. They're all upset. Everybody's upset. It's really cold. So,
how did you come up with the idea? You and like, what was the listeners want to know this? I get asked this all the time, and I don't have a good answer for it. Where did TWiP come from? Was it just like on a lark?
No, there was we were doing a bunch of different shows. We were working on a bunch of different shows. And so, I had been involved with This Week in Photography, or This Week in Tech with Leo, since the early days, not since day one. And a lot of times I was behind the scenes. So sometimes I was on the show with Leo, but a lot of times I was editing. I told Leo at one point that I was like, we should do a video version of TWiP, and I can shoot it with a bunch of cameras, and we'll cut it all together with multicam. It's all new in Final Cut, and I had never done it before, and pulled like an all-nighter to cut it all together. And before you knew it, we were, doing some of the audio editing and some of the video for TWiP. And so it was just something like I was like, well, this would be great. This format is great, except I'm more interested in photography, and so I was interested in really doing the same thing where you're covering, all kinds of things. And in TWiM, I believe we were already doing This Week in Media, and so, I had kind of thought about that format a fair bit, and I loved the idea of just every week talking about whatever's going on. And so I think that was it. And then it was just a matter of finding the right people. So I guess, when I talked to you and Ron said, hey, we should do this. I was like, yes, we should. And you'll be on it. I was like, finally found somebody who wants to play, so a lot of times with me, as most of I'll sit around with a lot of brimming ideas, and I'm just kind of waiting for things to pop into place, so I have all these things I want to do, and I just wait until all the bits and pieces show up, and then I do them. And so so that's kind of how it.
Well, tell us what you're doing now, because from the outside looking in, and I know you. I mean, I've known you for a long time now. But from the listener or the viewer standpoint, it looks like, what is Alex doing? So Alex is on TWiP from time to time. He's on Mac Break Weekly from time to time. He's on This Week in Photo sometimes, and then he goes away, and then he comes back. Like, it's like dark matter and dark energy.
Yeah, and I'm allowed to talk about it a little bit more than I used to be able to. So for a long time, we weren't, we didn't talk much about it. We, a lot of these shows had us get really good at these kind of interactive conversations, and how do we tie people together. And back when it was even much harder than it is today. I mean, even the technologies we're using tonight, it's really great. The Zoom stuff that we're using. Yeah. But we had been doing live streaming. We've been trying to train Africans. And so there was a lot of like, how do we train Africans? And we kept on trying to build these technologies. And then people started hiring us to do interactive events and live streaming. And then Google was working on, they had this crazy product called Hangouts, and they were trying to figure out how to stream it. And so they asked us to do that, if we could try that out. They had a couple of companies try and not do so well. Mm-hmm. And so we tried it, and we didn't totally screw it up. And they decided, well, they seem to know what they're doing. And, that was 3 years ago and 800 events ago. And so,
but you see how you roll over stuff like that, just so people can understand. So when Alex says we tried it and we didn't screw it up, that means they did something way above and beyond what normal mortals can do. Right. And then you roll over. Yeah. And then you fast forward 800 events later. Right. We're not talking little one-on-one meetings. We're talking full on like Emmy production type things. Right.
And Frederick's been on a couple of them. We've done a couple in the White House, I think. I just got back from Rome, where we did one in the Vatican. And so we've, been fortunate enough to really get a chance to just see, working with social media companies, especially companies like Google. What you end up with is just the huge imagination and the willingness to do just crazy things. And so
funding.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it's been really great. So we grew. Aaron gets pulled into a lot of shows. I don't know how Aaron sleeps anymore, because he's got his full-time thing, and then they're like, hey, Aaron, let's come play. So he plays a lot, and with a lot of the stuff that we're doing, and Frederick gets pulled in about once a year, and so anyway, but yeah, so that's what we're doing. We. In the midst of all these events that we're doing, we've really figured out some other things around, these kind of virtual discussions and how they might look in the future. And so we're kind of in the process of developing, or I'm in the process of working with a couple partners to develop some software platforms to make them easier, as well as I have a hardware platform that keeps on getting rebuilt and then ripped apart, then rebuilt, and then ripped apart and rebuilt. And the newest version just got finished right before the show, and it's amazing. Anyway, so it's
like Doc Brown of the internet. You're like,
oh yeah, you know, it's like this crazy, you know, it's all these monitors and wires and rerouting, and so you can sit there and like do like 6 different things at once. Anyway, I'll show it. We're hopefully going to use it on the TWiP network soon.
I would love to. Yes,
as soon as it doesn't look quite as crazy as it is right now.
Hey, I'm all about beta testing, man. So bring it on.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's what I'm doing. And I'm trying to travel a little less, but it's a little crazy. We also, in the meantime, from the time we started TWiP to now, we've opened a school in Rwanda. So all that trying to train in Africa, you know, came to fruition, and we've got about 150 students in Rwanda, and a pretty state-of-the-art facility. We've got motion capture and green screen and, you know, live streaming and, you know, 40 computers and a bunch of great students. And so it's so anyway, so I'm going back down there in March. I go about every 8 to 12 weeks. So anyway, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, you need to start blogging that stuff, man, so we can keep up with you. Start like a video blog or something.
I've thought about it. You know, the problem is I tend to be such a perfectionist. This is what I do, and so every time I go to start shooting video, I'm like, oh, I don't like it. I got to reshoot it. I got to do this thing, and
you got to let go of that.
Yeah.
So anyway.
So Alex, when you were in the Vatican, you were basically hanging with the Pope. Is that what you're kind of telling us?
I wasn't hanging with him for too long, but yeah, I got but I did get to shake his hand. Well, he shook my hand really. But yeah, we were working out of the Synod, which is the kind of the really cool room where they make a lot of stuff. He was talking to kids who are, you can see it on YouTube, but talking to kids who are have a variety of disadvantages, whether it's eyesight or hearing or other things. And he was just talking about how technology makes a difference. And so he's a pretty cool guy.
It's just insane. It is crazy that we are in an age right now where we're talking about doing live streams to the world from the Vatican. I mean, that's just like,
well, and for me, it's exciting because, you know, the mission statement for the Pixel Corps is a global conversation where no one's left out. And then that was from day one, you know, and so for us to get the chance to, you know, tie all these people together, you know, whether it's the president or the Pope or, you know, the space station or any of those other things, it's just like, it's fulfilling what we roughly started out to do, which we didn't even know what that was going to look like when it started. So it's it's exciting, and the technology has made it so much easier. I mean, when we started Pixel Corps, I remember we did everything in Flash because we didn't have enough money to pay for the bandwidth. Like, you know, literally, it was like too expensive. If too many people came to watch it, we would go broke. You know, like literally bankrupt the company. Like, we wanted to be successful, but not too successful.
Yeah.
And so everything was 1 meg. You know, and now I look at it now, and it's just, you know, just put up HD and upload 4K to YouTube, and
ridiculous.
So it's pretty exciting. It's an exciting time to be doing this.
I love this stuff. Yeah, it evolves. Some of that stuff we're going to talk about in the show tonight. Before we jump into the show, I want to thank our first sponsor for episode 400 of This Week in Photo, and that's our good friends over at freshbooks.com. All right, guys, let's jump into the show. This first piece, Alex, I think this is right up your alley, right? So Toshiba revealed its camera modules for the Google Project Era thingamajigger, right? So you know a little bit about this, and I think you may have even seen this in passing somewhere. So Alex, tell us what Project Era is, and
I think it's Ara.
Ara, is it Ara?
Yeah. And it's really cool. It's this phone that basically, instead of, you know, just having an app, it's not only there's an app for that, there's a module for that. So the phone itself is a platform for which you can put all kinds of, you know, hardware manufacturers can put different pieces of hardware on top of the phone. So you can click things in. So there's certain sized modules that are available. And so you can have them all fit together. You can have them work together, or you can have them work apart.
Like Lego. Like Legos.
It's like Legos. It's like Legos for a phone, you know, and they all click in, and it's, you know, again, I don't know if it's the thing that my parents would use, but it's definitely a thing that I would use. You know, I am definitely very tempted to, I mean, I can't wait to have one. You know, I have to admit, the idea of being able to buy, and for instance, this is a good example, is being able to buy a real camera module. Like, some people don't need a real camera module, but I want, I want to see big sensors and low light sensitivity. And that's more important to me than than a lot of other things in my phone. I mean, and I think that, Apple is never going to put a 1-inch sensor, into a phone. But I think that we could at some point see that kind of, that kind of thing put into something like this, where it makes sense to make these available. I mean, you look at these Toshiba chips aren't that big yet, but they are head and shoulders over what is available right now. And so I think that it's a really interesting thing. I don't think it's going to be the majority of the market is ever going to get into it, but I think that there's going to be a very dedicated bunch. And I think that makes a lot of a difference for also for business, government. There's a lot of people who, specialized medical devices, specialized business devices, military opportunities. There's all kinds of ways that you can integrate this phone in a way that you're just not going to be able to do with a standard off-the-shelf phone. It's very exciting.
It's just interesting. I don't know. I was looking at this, and I remember you and I talked about it briefly a month or so ago, and I still sit on the fence because half of me is like, you know what? I just need my phone to work. I want to know it. I want to be able to make a call, take a picture every now and then, send a message, whatever, and then I'm done with it. Like turning on the water in the bathroom. It just needs to work. I don't care how it gets out of there. It just needs to work every time. And this, when I saw this, and granted, I have not touched this, I haven't played with it, but when I saw it, I was thinking, this feels complex. It feels like there's a lot of things that could go wrong, and it feels like I might, screw something up, and I don't know. It just feels like it's moving away from being a phone. Am I off base there?
Well, I think it's a platform. It is a computing platform. That's what I would say. It's a phone. It might make phone calls or something that looks like phone calls, but I think that what's more important is that it is a mobile, in your pocket computing platform that is modular and able to do all kinds of different things. And that's the way I think of a lot of the stuff that I do now, with my phone. I very rarely make phone calls. In fact, I'm kind of annoyed when people call me.
Me too. I hate it.
Because I'm usually in the middle of something. It's like my Audible book stops, I'm like, wow, who's calling me right now? And so
messed up my Amazon Instant Video stream, man.
Exactly. There's very few times I want someone to call. Like and usually, unless it's my wife, they pretty much get the, did we schedule this call? Because I don't remember scheduling this call, because there's a time for calls, and that's when it's a schedule for the call, and so as we move away from this environment where we feel like, that we can, that we're using our phone for that. I mean, I use my phone much more often for whether it's social media or other things like that. Or, all the little tools that I add to it, the photography tools, the map tools, all those other things. And I think that, a lot of what I use my iPad for is not really, it's to integrate it with other systems. And so I think that this kind of thing, again, small part of the market, 3% maybe, 5% of the market, but that's still a big market.
It is.
This idea of the whole modular system, and we've heard about it a lot, in the broader photographic context, about the idea of having your Nikon camera and maybe ultimately being able to switch out the sensor and all that kind of thing. I guess the Red platform, I don't know it well, but that's somewhat modular. Do you guys think that there's any kind of do you think this idea can, transfer to the more traditional camera platforms, or it's just not a good marketing business?
I hope so, Steve. I hope so, because this is like far left in terms of like the Lego kind of metaphor. What I would like to see is a Nikon, a Canon, a Olympus, a Panasonic, whatever camera, where I can just slap my eye, like Alex was talking about years ago, being able to just slide my iPhone into it, and it becomes the brains of this shell of a camera. The manufacturer handles what they do best, which is optics and all that cool stuff, and the sensor. And then my phone becomes the brain of the camera, and I can install apps and do all that stuff. That's what I want.
So, but Frederick, we've definitely been talking about this for a long time, right?
Yeah.
You can buy it now. Sony's got
Android though.
No, I think you can clip that Sony one onto your iPhone too.
It's a lens, yeah. It's a big,
the
big
lens
lens.
camera.
It's a lens plus a sensor, but that's what we've been talking about, right?
Yeah, kind of. But
you haven't bought it.
The Sony thing is a bit of a kludge, though. I mean, it's like It's
Yeah,
like
I mean,
strapping
the problem
rockets
is,
on a turtle. You know? I don't,
yeah, well, and I have it. I have that lens.
me
Of
too.
course,
And it's in the
I bought it immediately. I was like, I gotta have this. It's
yeah.
finally happening, and then I got it. And it's bunky, it's slow, it's kludgy. It's not, like you want it to be a real video. Like I wanted to have a hardware interaction with my phone where I'm getting, real time video with no lag, with no, and I'm be able to record it to my phone or stream it if I wanted to or whatever I want to do. So I feel like, I think Sony kind of played with it down the road, and I love the idea because you really, what was like, all I need is the lens and the sensor, but it turned out that I need the lens and the sensor and a little bit of performance. And I think that one of the things that I think for a lot of these companies that is really missing is opening up the API, like really saying, okay, here's the deal. We're going to give you controls over the camera, not every little bit down to the BIOS, but we're going to give you all the things that you would see in a menu as a programmer. And we're going to let you write apps on Android or iPhone that will activate that in your video camera or in your still camera. And that would revolutionize a lot of this. A lot of these guys, what they think is that their interface is what makes the difference. And it's really their interface it's in spite of their interface that we use their camera, because almost, I don't care whether it's Canon or Nikon or whatever, these are horrible. Like, who thought of this? You're like, what are they thinking? And so the thing is it would be great just to let that go and let iPhone, iPhone develop, iOS developers and Android developers develop great interfaces for their phone, and that I could theoretically hook a lightning and then hook it into the phone and run it, or run it wirelessly. But I want that more for video, I have to admit, than even for stills, of being able to shade my cameras and do all the other stuff with my iPhone.
But like you said, if the API is open, you could theoretically create the perfect camera for the person that leans towards video, whereas Aaron could create the perfect camera setup for the person that's doing drone stuff or whatever, right? So Aaron, tell us what you think about this. So looking at this modular Optimus Prime kind of phone thing, is this something that would appeal to you?
Yeah, you guys are hitting on one of the primary things I was thinking about when I first saw this project. I'm less interested in adding other sensors to my phone. I'm curious to know whether the development work that's going to go on there is going to lead to applications and a platform which might start moving in the other direction and might start attaching this platform to higher end cameras, to mirrorless cameras, large sensor devices, so on and so forth. But I just want to know whether there's any chance that they'll do enough development, they'll make great enough apps kind of in that phone environment that it's going to compel the higher end camera makers to pull it away from the phone and pull that platform into building this modular camera market that we've all been talking about.
And when you go back to like the old Nikon F, it was completely modular. Not only are the lenses interchangeable, but the finders, the screens. I mean, there were no sensors in those days, but the idea of building a modular system, it does sound kind of appealing to us. If we want a huge, high definition, big, large megapixel sensor, we can click it in, or if we don't need it, if we want speed, I mean, who knows? I mean, it could be a great idea.
I think it could be a Trojan horse of sorts.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, looking at this thing, I'm showing right now on the screen for the folks that are watching this. I'm at Petapixel's website, and this is the article that we're referring to. But this is the Toshiba module for this thing, and it's the camera module that Alex was talking about. So, Alex, what I would like to see is a future iPhone, maybe iPhone 10 or something, that allows me to pop out the camera module, slide it out like a little SD card, and slide in a new camera. Do you think that might ever happen?
Not for an iPhone. It'll be whatever Apple decides makes the most sense.
Yeah, but what's to stop you from providing a phone like this, but it doesn't have to replace the existing one? It just either Bluetooth over to it or hooks into the Lightning port or something like that. I think that's more. I think a phone as a device needs to be an integrated unit, and then you can make these add-on stuff that don't need a special.
Well, the problem with the Bluetooth thing is, back to the conversation about the Sony lens camera. It's a great idea, but when you have that lens camera and your phone, and that's the only thing you have with you, and something significant happens across the street and you want to take a picture, you're like 3 minutes trying to get that thing snapped on your camera and synced and paired before you get the shot, whereas Steve would whip out his DSLR and get the shot and keep driving, So it's got to be that kind of level of speed, and I don't see that with lens camera type technology.
Yeah, but to take it the other another example, I had to shoot some like time lapse stuff. I had like a mouse in the house, and I was trying to get a picture of this damn mouse that was coming out of my house in the middle of the night. I'm like, all right, what scenario do I have? What tools do I have for shooting time lapse every 10 seconds to see what this mouse is doing on the kitchen counter? And I was like, okay, I know my Olympus OMD has a Wi-Fi connection, and I can do that. And I'm thinking about setting it up, and I can get something to control that. And I'm like, oh yeah, but then the battery's going to die after. There was just all kinds of limitations. And I ended up just pulling my old iPhone 4S and tethering it to a wall wart to have USB power, and just letting it go. And there was a dozen apps I could use for it, and it worked great.
Yeah.
So
And did you get the mouse?
I got a great picture of the mouse too.
There we go.
Cute little guy that my wife then said, no, you can't put a mouse trap out. We need a humane trap. So now we're working on those. But
Yeah, a humane trap, like some rat poison or something. Right?
yeah.
But humane would be fast-acting rat poison.
If my dear little kitty cat hadn't been hit by a car a few months back,
sorry.
I would
Sorry.
have taken care of it. But
Yeah.
well,
No, I hear you. Well, yeah. I mean, this is interesting, and Alex, dude, you called it, what, 5+ years ago that this stuff was going to start coming to fruition. We saw it first with the Sony camera, and now Google with Project, how do you pronounce it? Ara? So
Ara, yeah.
Project Ara is here or being developed, and, presumably a bunch of other things that we don't even know about. So again, almost every show, I feel like I say this is a really exciting time to be a photographer, because all this cool stuff keeps popping out and it doesn't show any signs of going away.
Well, I think it's hard. I think it's also exciting times, and I think sometimes it can be seen as exciting times, like in the Chinese curse. May you live in exciting times. I mean, I think that if you're a professional photographer, I think there's a lot of challenges right now. I think that figuring out exactly what that looks like. I think that the way people made money, we were talking about this the last time I think I was on TWiP, was that I got a lot of feedback on that, by the way. Oh my gosh. When we're talking about photojournalism, and I was like, I don't think it's.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Itself, I guess my argument is by itself, it wasn't a viable, industry for most people, unless you're in the very, 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 very top of what you're doing. Because I think that really people are looking for journalists who can write and shoot video and take pictures. I mean, that's kind of the next generation of what these things are. So it's exciting for those folks. And so this has democratized the ability to take all these photos. It doesn't necessarily make people better, but when you have a lot more people doing it, I went through graphic design where I was getting paid, $3.50 an hour to do design work for a large network, and it was horrible. I did a lot of horrible work on Photoshop and PageMaker and Quark, and but I got better, and a lot of people did, and I think that it created a new industry, and I think that that's what we're kind of in this kind of crazy moment, is when we go from the big houses to just everybody being able to do it.
Yeah, democratization. So that's a perfect segue, Alex, as I want to talk about, speaking of new industries that are changing things. The FAA has released a draft of its drone regulations. This story comes to us through Aaron Mailer via our friends at Petapixel. So Aaron, tell us about this. So we've been talking about drones, UAVs, UASs, whatever is the flavor of the week to call these things that you fly around and take pictures from above with. But it's, one of the questions that has been floating around is, okay, is the FAA going to come in and regulate and squash the complete industry? Are they going to foster, the advancement of this industry, or what's going on? And it looks from this article that we read and from the main rules that the FAA has proposed so far, it looks like they're getting behind us and hopefully pushing this forward, or maybe it's a Trojan horse. I don't know. What do you think?
I think based on the speculation we were hearing last year, it's looking a lot less onerous than we kind of anticipated.
Yeah.
And I'll be perfectly honest with you, as much as I've been tinkering and building and experimenting with it, I've done virtually nothing commercial with it, because for a couple of years now, the FAA has made it's been so complicated to know whether you could work legally in the process People are getting sued almost randomly for use of drones, yet you see a tremendous amount of commercial use regardless.
Yeah.
See companies like DJI and all selling systems exactly for that purpose. So
I see in movies all the time. I see drone aerials in movies with the shadow of the drone in the shot.
And I'll be perfectly honest with you. I've seen some really stupid stuff done with drones too, in terms of flying them over crowds and concerts, and I've seen plenty of accidents that also kind of had me putting the brakes on, being very aggressive with my equipment. So my concern was that it was going to be extremely kind of an onerous rule set. And in reality, this draft that's come out is sounding relatively balanced for the most part. Line of sight is the one thing that's a little irritating to some of us, especially if we've been building out, systems for doing remote, visualization or seeing from a drone's eye view, essentially, with monitors and head-mounted displays and so on. They are saying that it's going to have to be completely within the line of sight of the pilot. So a little frustrating there, maybe. But and they're also talking about some licensing requirements. But initially the speculation was they were talking about full pilot-style licenses, was just a crazy idea for anybody who would be flying drones. I mean, that just would have killed the market for the vast majority of people right there. But now they're talking about a far more sensible kind of testing process and renewal every couple of years. The price on that might not be that great. And I think that would lead to some far more safe operation and separate playing from being far more serious and more safe with the equipment. So.
Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, Steve, one of the rules in here, and I thought about you when I read this, was no flying over people. So basically, this means that you can't fly this in New York City. You could not. You can't own a drone in New York, right?
Well, I mean, that it really doesn't surprise me. I mean, the idea of using this technology, obviously, when Aaron mentioned a full kind of license testing thing, I mean, these things are potentially dangerous. And I was actually surprised to see how kind of open those rules were. But I'll throw it out there to you guys. I mean, the first sort of bad thing that happens that becomes a big news story, do you think that the FAA is going to just sort of tighten things up? I mean, that's
what they're doing now.
Fair enough.
Yeah, there it is right there. Someone dropped a drone into the backyard of the White House, and here we have the rules.
Fair enough. But I mean, the fact is, when someone gets killed by one of these things, or if this thing really starts to, there's an accident where there's, some people are injured. I mean, that's when I think there's going to be an outcry to say, hey, we got to shut this down to a large extent. I hope it doesn't happen that way, of course, but it seems to me that, it's almost inevitable that something bad might happen. You get enough people getting involved with this, and not everyone is going to be as responsible as they need to be.
Yeah. I mean, the only way that something bad could happen as a result of these UAVs is if humans are involved. I'm just saying.
Right. Exactly.
So that's the only way. And, because it's Steve, like you said, what's going to happen is we're going to have some person like the shoe bomber, right? That's going to do something stupid with a drone, and then drones are suddenly going to be seen as evil or vilified.
Yeah, but I'm not even talking, the terrorist kind of thing. I'm just talking about people using this stuff, hobbyists, and, not paying attention and flying it over, and someone gets hurt, and then, everybody suffers because of it.
Yeah.
I hope it doesn't happen, but
I don't know. Ron, where do you fall on this? I mean, are you considering getting one of these things? As I am. I've been considering one for a year, and it's.
Well, I actually have one of the little Parrot drones, which is sort of the entry model kind of.
That doesn't count.
Little play. But, it's still got helicopter blades, and probably give you an owie if it were to hit you.
Yeah. You'd be like, "What was that? Does it fly?"
But no, I've been actually working with some buddies that are doing much larger drones, fixed wing, not little helicopters, but little fixed wing drones.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
And the interesting thing there is definitely the thing that was interesting out of this latest FAA thing is definitely the question of whether you have to do line of sight or not, because that sort of limits the utility of a lot of things that you can do with that. So that was the big one that kept coming up is, when are they going to get to where the line of sight limitation can be modified? But I think, there's going to be a whole lot of regulations, and then there's going to be a whole lot of changes to those regulations, and hopefully it's going to emerge with there's going to be some kind of licensing that's needed. I don't have a problem with that for most of these, larger ones. and some common sense rules with some probable exemptions you can get if you get a permit for it. It'll work itself out.
Yeah. Well, I hope so.
Ultimately, I think that the utility of these is just huge. The number of things that you can do with them, we're not even scratching the surface. Yeah.
I mean, in the summertime in New York City, I sort of have to look up and make sure air conditioners are not falling from the apartment buildings to, kill me on the head. Now, the drone thing is going to be the next thing that the neurotic New Yorker is going to have to worry about, I guess.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, if you look at where just military drone technology is, to the extent that we know about what they can do, and what we know about what these consumer drones can do, like the DJI Inspire, and and you look at these YouTube videos with synchronized drone flight with these dozens of drones flying together in perfect synchronization, and we're only in 2015. I'm thinking, what's going to happen by like 2020? When these things are pushed to the nth degree, and everyone's wearing Apple Watches and Google Watches, and it's just crazy where this stuff could go.
And I think some of the stuff that we've seen with some of the most innovative things, I mean, and I have a DJI Phantom that I've been just starting to play with and everything else. So hopefully I'll be able to post some videos soon of my backyard. But part of why I was excited about moving back out to Pennsylvania was I was in the middle of nowhere. I didn't want to hit anybody with it. I had a Parrot and I wrecked it, like destroyed it in literally like a half an hour. I definitely grew to have a very deep understanding of like, I gotta be careful with the drones. Yeah. But I think that one of the things I think is takes selfies to a whole nother level. These drones that will follow you around. So you have a tracker on you that the drone knows, look at the tracker. And so the drone is following you around while you're biking or you're out with your friends or you're running, and there's a drone like taking a movie of it, but from it is aerial view. And I saw that at the last CES, and I thought that was ingenious, just that you could have.
Ghost Drone is one of the company that's doing that, and we're bringing them on TWiP soon. And I think they're based out of China, but they have an office here in the Bay Area. And that's exactly what they do. They hone in on your cell phone location, and you launch this drone, and it essentially follows you. And they called it Ghost Drone. I think I was talking to them on the phone. I was like, you guys should have called this Stalker Drone, because it just it follows you around all the time. It's perfect.
So but I think it's just that, there's a whole interesting, and I think, we're going to take part of what I'm doing is testing all the stuff so that I can take it, of course, to Africa. And there's all these shots of, safari and waterfalls and all kinds of other stuff that you're going to be able to get a whole nother view of what's there. And people are already doing those things. I think that the most amazing drone footage I've seen to date is the drone footage of the fireworks, where someone put their drone, and I know a lot of people got upset that it was very dangerous and everything else, but oh my gosh. I mean, it was just a whole other view of what fireworks look like. It was just, I thought it was just stunning, so anyway, I think that those are the kind of things. And I think that, that's what we're seeing with photography in general, whether it's drones, and all that technology, by the way, of course, goes to stabilization. So all these drones have all these, they have all the stabilization. I have a little handheld thing that you can put your GoPro on, and it's got these 3 little gyros on it. And so I can run behind my kids and get this perfectly smooth, and so all this technology isn't just drones. It's in the Ronin, which can hold RED cameras. It's in these little $300 handheld things for your iPhone. All of these things are changing the way we shoot. But I think that whether it's slow motion, 240 frames on your iPhone, stop, time lapse where you're, condensing time, and then all these crazy places you can put cameras, you just get pretty exciting, different set of views of the world.
It's another tool.
On a slight tangent, I mean, from a safety perspective, you probably saw that selfie sticks are now banned from all these museums in New York City and all this.
Oh my gosh.
Stick.
This is the year of the selfie stick. In Rome, they're wandering around. In Rome, they're just wandering around. There's guys just wandering everywhere with selfie sticks. I mean, it was just crazy. It was just these guys. It was like the new umbrella, and we were talking about it. What you really need is an umbrella with a selfie stick, and then you'd be set. But they were everywhere. There'd be 100 selfie sticks per block, and people were using them. And They had the low-tech ones that just held your camera, but then they had the high-tech ones with the little, goes into the headphone thing with a little button at the bottom so you can push it out.
Yeah. I mean, they're banned from a number of museums in New York and Boston, etc. And, partly they're talking about safety among the patrons and also the arts, getting somehow. I mean, if that kind of discretion is placed on a selfie stick, the drone thing, I mean, there's a lot more potential danger with those things.
I'm thinking a drone through Momo right now. I mean, I think that is
that would be totally cool. I'd like to see that video.
Yeah.
There's some cool uses of drones. Like when I was talking to Eric Chang, he's over at DJI the other day, and I was telling him, not that he was listening, but I was like, this is what I want. I want a drone that I can mount, an industrial drone that I can mount to the side of my house. Then when I travel, like I'm going to Washington, D.C., and I have my phone, I want to be able to deploy my drone to do a security flyover around the perimeter of my house and then land again and then seal itself up and then tell, so I can see. Or if something happens, somebody's trying to break in or on my property, I want the drone to deploy itself and shine a light on them.
I love it.
I'm just disappointed.
You have 10 seconds to comply.
I'm disappointed that it's only a flashlight. That's all I'm saying.
Drop some bombs.
I mean, I'd just be like, this is. I'm going to give you a little ISIS treatment right now.
Exactly. Yeah. Taser industry and drone industry.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a video. That's a video. A taser armed drone would be.
Yeah. Send your email to Alex Lindsay.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So for the folks that are listening, I'm going to run down just the highlights of some of the main rules from the FAA that they proposed. So first one, line of sight. A small UAS operator must always see and avoid manned aircraft. Okay, obvious. If there's a risk of collision, the UAS operator must be the first to maneuver away. Okay. Safety first is the second one. The operator must discontinue the flight when continuing would pose a hazard to other aircraft, people, or property. Emergency awareness. A small UAS operator must assess weather conditions, airspace restrictions, and the location of people to lessen risks if he or she loses control of the UAS. This is Steve Simons, this next one. No flying over people. A small UAS. And it says a small UAS may not fly over people except those directly involved with the flight. Does that mean a large UAS can fly over people?
Which should be a different licensing. I bet you what that is I bet you that's going to be a licensing thing. So if you're a hobbyist, you can't do it. And if you get a permit and go through flight training and have a large UAS,
you could do it. Yeah. The next one is altitude and speed. Flight should be limited to 500 feet altitude and no faster than 100 miles per hour. And then the last one is restricted access. Operators must stay out of airport flight paths and restricted airspace areas and obey any FAA temporary flight restrictions, aka TFRs. So, and I know DJI, speaking with DJI, right after that, Alex, that White House thing, they updated the firmware on all DJI aircraft or UAVs to automatically restrict airspace. So if you have a UAV and you live next to an airport, you're not flying. It just doesn't work. It won't take off. It'll just flash.
Well, I was amazed at how quickly they did that. Like they might have been thinking about that for just a little while. Like maybe we should figure this out.
Push out that firmware update real quick.
They pushed it out too fast though because they had bugs with it and had to retract it.
Oh, they did. It's not there. What happened?
Yeah. They were having problems with from what I understand anyway, I think they had to retract the firmware because it caused problems with people launching drones in areas well beyond that range, among other issues.
This person lives in a house that's white. It's a White House.
Yeah.
I think it's a GPS bubble. They can put a bubble around areas and just program that, right?
Alex, I just have to say that anytime somebody, says things like stun gun mounted drone, I have to Google it. And I just have to read the headline of intern shot with 80,000 volt drone mounted stun gun.
And all I have to say is awesome.
The company you're interning for asks you to volunteer to be the test dummy for a prototype stun gun drone. You can say no.
Oh,
there was a big discussion.
That'd be a cool security system though around your house. I mean, come on. Yeah. That would be brilliant. I want that on my car too. So if somebody tries to break into the car, it just deploys and does its thing. Perfect.
Yep.
All right, guys, let's move on to story number 3. This is about a company called Affinity Photo. They've offered they're offering an affordable alternative to Photoshop. So you folks that have been crying foul against Adobe and their Creative Cloud subscription model, this company has created something that they're saying is going to be kind of like Photoshop. And quote, they say, Serif, which is company, touts the product as the fastest, smoothest, most precise professional image editing software for Mac. That's a pretty strong statement there. So I want to have you guys chime in. Aaron, why don't you just take this first? I'm sure you went to the page, you saw what they have to do or what they're putting out there. Is it like the end all be all? Is this the Photoshop killer?
I have to be honest with you. I've had very little time to play with it, so I will say from what I have done with it, it looks very nice. It really does, especially for something that's currently in beta. But I don't have enough hands-on time really to
I agree, though. I downloaded it and played with it a little bit the other day, and I'm impressed. It's they've got a lot of stuff in there. They're being really smart about what it does. Mm-hmm. They I think most professionals who use Photoshop definitely have sort of a love-hate relationship with it. It's a very powerful tool that feels like it which was designed, from a user interface perspective 20 years ago or something.
Yeah.
And I mean, my only complaint about this Affinity stuff is that in some ways I think they didn't go far enough away from the Photoshop paradigm. There's still too many things that require you to think like Photoshop does, but they've done a pretty good job with kind of modernizing and getting at least a little bit more consistency in terms of how it works. Photoshop really feels like there's things just kind of bolted on here and there. And I'm pretty impressed with it. So
yeah, I say good for them. I mean, it looks pretty impressive from the little that I've seen it. I mean, Photoshop is as deep as an ocean. I mean, it's really not for most photographers. It's way too much for most photographers, which is why I guess people went to Lightroom and Aperture. But this thing looks pretty impressive. And I say, it's great to see some competition. It's almost surprising because, Adobe and Photoshop is this behemoth that started it all, and it's amazing to see that a smaller company can come up with software like this in a relatively short time.
But Steve, that sounds good, but in practice, right? So I think it looks amazing too, and I want to play with it. I haven't had a chance to play with it either, Aaron. But looking at it, I'm like, okay, I want to dive in and see what it can do. But what it comes down to, Steve, like if you go on one of your trips, you're going to Dubai or Africa or someplace that you travel to, and you come back with a bunch of images, are you confident that you could put them in this app and do the gig? In other words, can you forsake Photoshop? Or are you going to be like, you know what, screw this, I got to go back to Photoshop because I got stuff to do?
Well, to be honest, I mean, I rarely use Photoshop. I use Photoshop, for selected situations after I've edited my work and processed it. When you have that 5-star image that you're going to bring to a client, you want to see maybe what it can, how, if you can make it 10% better outside of Lightroom or Aperture using Photoshop. So for me, and I think for a lot of photographers with the volume of work they're doing, this, from what I can tell, is not necessarily your first go-to place. Yeah. But if you want to use it as an external editor and it's simplified compared to Photoshop and, gets the job done, I say, why not?
Why not?
Well, and I downloaded it and I've been doing this stuff. I use Photoshop for something probably almost every day. Mm-hmm. And so what I started doing was, okay, when I had time, I'm gonna do it for every single thing, but for a lot of things I'm doing every day, I go into Affinity first. So I just open it up. Okay, here's what I want to do. Can I do it? And I go in there and about half the time right now I'm, and it may be just me learning, what those things are. About half the time I go, oh yeah, I was able to do that. It was really fast. And I will say the things that I can do in Affinity, I can do really, really quickly, but I can also do that in Pixelmator. Those are, a lot of these things, they're using the GPU, they're using a lot of the other things. I think that the interface on Affinity bothers me less than Pixelmator. Pixelmator, I feel like I'm like working with little cartoons,
it's
like with the,
it's a little toyish, yeah.
And there's little bits and pieces, but things like, for instance, I could not figure out how to duplicate an alpha channel. Like I was just like, I don't understand why this isn't working. Or take a channel out or something like that. I just couldn't quite. I wanted to extract a logo from something, and I know how to do that very, very quickly in Photoshop. It's like 30 seconds, to pull something
and
out.
That's where Adobe, I mean, that's
but I don't know.
Learned behavior is part of
it's learned behavior for us. I mean, I've been using it since 1991, so or 1992. So the thing is that it's learned behavior for me, but I don't know if a new person coming in wouldn't just find Affinity just as easier to use. I think that there's deep things that a lot of us know how to do that you still hit your wall, and I go, okay, I'm going to go back to, and I'll come back to Affinity and try to figure out how I would do that. But it does have some kind of wonky, some wonky ways it's handling copying and channels and stuff like that. That I don't know how much that affects everyone. I use them so deeply all the time that it affects me a lot. Right. I'm not sure if it affects everybody.
I am a little disappointed that they didn't go even further with kind of trying to come up with some new paradigm. I mean, Alex, we want node views at some level, right? We
had talked about, like when we were building Conduit, there was definitely a discussion about whether we could push Conduit towards a Photoshop type thing, because what you want is that non-destructive editing that you would see in Shake or Conduit.
Nonlinear, and the ability to pipe channels in and out at will and all that kind of stuff. There was a really cool project, I don't know if you ever saw it, Alex, called Naked Light.
No.
You should look it up. I think it's just naked.la. And which is a great URL. It has strange overtones, but
there's a lot of people that go to it and they're very disappointed. Exactly. They're like, "This is not at all what I expected."
It's not what I signed up for.
Yeah, it feels like it kind of died on the vine, but it was. I was really optimistic that they were going to kind of crack this, as powerful as Photoshop, but a different paradigm that actually ends up making it more powerful. And I still think there's room for that out there somewhere. I would love to see somebody do it.
Yeah, I think that the hard part is that there are things, what we really found that was difficult when we were dealing with nodal compositing and in images, there were things that didn't work as well in nodal compositing. Yep. And there were things that worked, in trying to get those two worlds of image editing and nodal compositing together, we found very hard to architect. I think that's the hard part, is that was the thing that kind of twisted our brain, is that you really had to create places where you would flatten the image into a node where it was going to, you're going to go into this area and it's going to go into this node and it's going to come out of this node. And inside of that, it's just going to be pixel processing. And then we're going to go, or we're going to, do stuff with paintbrushes, and then it's going to come out the other end.
You're turning into Neo, Alex. You need to tell us what
like Ron and Alex, you're talking about all that stuff. I think that most of us probably don't have to go as. I mean, we know your background and all that, but I think for the average photographer, they're probably not going anywhere near as deep in terms of.
But I disagree, because I think that this weird stuff that you're doing in Photoshop, where you're copying alpha channels or you're doing layers and painting through and all that kind of stuff. See, it's the same process. It's just the interface in Photoshop is actually kind of weird and inconsistent. And there are ways that, we're accustomed to doing film effects that are just much more, once you understand the basic concept, they're much more self-consistent across a whole range of things that you want to do. So I don't think it's anything you're not, you don't already do in Photoshop. It's just a different way of
presenting. Well, and what I teach kids how to do visual effects, and the one thing that is absolute is that it is way easier to teach kids how to use Shake or Nuke or Conduit than it is to teach them how to use After Effects. Because when they can see the whole thing. Like we can sit there and it's much easier. If you give me a 12-year-old who's never done anything and I sit there and show nodes, okay, we're going to do this, then we're going to do this, because we draw it on the board. Like, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to take this and we're going to remove this, and you see it the whole time. And if you want to change it, you change it. You don't have to figure out how do I back up 6 steps and then go back forward 6 steps. You just change a little line from here to there, and they completely get it. And adults have a harder time. Anyone who's done Photoshop or After Effects have a hard time with it, but anyone who's not done it, nodal compositing makes way more sense.
I want to put this out to you guys. So it feels like we are at the nexus of the perfect storm for a new player in the industry, right? So we've had Apple, making the decision, and I don't have any insider knowledge, but it feels like they're making the decision to move their photography efforts more in the direction of the consumer. They've killed off Aperture, or are killing off Aperture, and they've announced that the Photos app is going to be more iPhoto-like and more consumer-focused, with no mention of any sort of pro app. We've got Adobe, which, like we've said in the show, is getting a little long in the tooth, and Photoshop is feeling a little bit sort of, if you live in the South Bay, in the Bay Area, feeling a little bit like the Winchester Mystery House. You know, it's this structure that has been bolted onto over the years, so you end up with this monstrosity that serves no one perfectly, but serves everybody okay. So is it time now is this like the perfect storm for a startup to come in there and say, all right, we've looked at Adobe, we've looked at Google, we've looked at, you know, all these other guys, and this is how we think 2015 going forward should be for image editing. Alex, what do you think?
Well, I think that we're seeing that. I think with Pixelmator, with Affinity, with, you know, I think that we're definitely seeing entrepreneurs. I mean, Pixelmator has made a lot of money. I mean, these guys are not, you know, they are a successful, very, very successful company already doing what they're doing. So that's how you start. That's how you begin. And they've done a lot of things right. There's things that, you know, as a person who's used Photoshop all the time, you know, that I'm not really totally into, but we don't install, for instance, Photoshop on every machine. We've got, and Pixel Core has grown a little bit. I've got over 100 Macs, you know, floating around in the Pixel Core. Yeah. There is about 8 copies of Photoshop. And there's certain people who are allowed to have Photoshop. You know, that I'm going to pay whatever it is a month to put the Photoshop on their machine. Right. Every machine has Pixelmator. So that's already gone down that path where we've made the decision that most of the people who have a computer, I need to have something on there that you can edit your images. I need to be able to, you know, resize them and cut them and crop them and do, you know, and do some basic operations, composite some of the stuff together. So I think that stuff is already really undermined in some ways, you know, Photoshop's dominance, where companies like mine, who are, you know, run by someone who's dyed-in-the-wool Photoshop user, is not putting it on everything. Right. You know, and so I think that I think Pixelmator has a good chance. I think that Affinity has a good chance. I think both of these are the heir apparents at the moment for, you know, some kind of image editing. I think that Adobe did hedge its bets a little bit with Lightroom. You know, where I'm going to give you a bunch of tools, a lot of what a lot of people were using. Of course, there's Photoshop elements, but you always feel like you're playing with the toy version. It just never got over feeling like you're working with a toy version. It's the base model without power windows, right? yeah, exactly. It's like I used to do all these Photoshop shows, for Tech TV, and they said, why don't you do ones for Photoshop Elements? And I'm like, I'd rather just do them for the people who pirated Photoshop. I was like, I don't want to bother with the Photoshop Elements. It's like I always feel like someone stumped off half of my hand every time I try to work. Photoshop Elements is for the people that couldn't figure out how to pirate Photoshop, right? So yeah, exactly. Is Elements. Right? So anyway, that's all. So it's so I think that they are, and I think Adobe has to think about this. They have to think about how to get more aggressive about their business model and everything else. And they have, I think that this is a big deal for them because I don't think that they are dominant in a lot of the places that they used to be. And I think that they have to figure out how to do that. And I don't think that their subscription model, I like the subscription model. I'll be honest with you. I mean, I like the fact that I can switch computers and just unregister from the other ones and register. Like I get onto somebody else's computer and I just need to run Photoshop. I install it and I just dump my home computer knowing I'll go back to it later. And it works really well for me. I have 2 problems with the subscription system. I don't mind the price that much, but I have 3 computers that I use, and it only allows you to use Photoshop on 2. I'm playing license and de-license and all this stuff. You've got to get another license. That's the deal. I know, but I don't want to. And then the other piece is I know I have access to the entire Adobe library now with the subscription, so I feel bad because I'm only using 1 or 2 apps in there. I don't feel like I'm getting my money's worth because I'm only using Photoshop and maybe Premiere sometimes. And now I'm not even using that anymore because I'm using Final Cut 10. So I feel like I'm not getting my money's worth because I have this garage full of tools that I could use, but I'm not using any of them. So I don't know. So Ron, or actually Aaron, I wanted to have you chime in on this. So in the notes here, I put what about Pixelmator? We talked about Pixelmator a little bit, but the gist of my little bullet in there was
the Adobe infrastructure into the digital imaging world is deep and wide. I mean, like me, for example, I grew up on Photoshop from version 2, version 1, I think, you know, learning channels, learning layers, learning channel operations, and all these different like ninja tricks that you can do to get the job done. So now, you know, fast forward to 2015, it's second nature for me to boot up Photoshop, make a quick title slate, boom, get out of there, throw it into Final Cut, do whatever I need to do. Is that root system too ingrained in our culture of the digital image creator to be unseated? And if so, how do we, if we're going to get more competition in that industry, does it take billions of dollars from an Apple or a Google? What do you think?
I think apps like Pixelmator and the one we're discussing now will certainly have that opportunity. But the thing that keeps going through my head the whole time in the conversation, what I was thinking too, and Steve beat me to it, was when you asked him earlier, what am I going to go to in my line of work most of the time with photography? I just go into Lightroom. I mean, I actually don't even launch Photoshop all that often anymore because the type of editing I'm doing is so completely covered by the Lightroom toolset. When I'm doing things with video, a lot of times I'm capable of getting what pieces and parts I need done in Final Cut itself or with some other applications. But I'm touching Photoshop a lot less all the time. So I'm wondering if it's got more to do with unseating them as much as it is a shift in targeting different audiences and different tool sets altogether.
Yeah, I think a lot of photographers want just the simple routes, and you know, with Apple's new Photos thing that's coming out, we'll see what that is. But you know, I'm pissed because I'm an Aperture guy. I love Aperture; it's worked for me fantastically, and you know, it's going away. And you know, I invested all that time in learning it, and I know that I'm going to have to do something else. But I think, yeah, the time is ripe for photographers like me, and the way Aaron described, where you want to spend a minimum time processing your images to get the maximum quality out of them and then get back out there shooting. You don't necessarily need to go all that deep. So you just want to have you know, a software that gives you that ability. And I love the idea of being able to catalog, and that's what Aperture did, what Lightroom does. And I think that's kind of important as our digital archives grow exponentially, a way to be able to sort of take control of things, organize them, back them up in the easiest possible way. And, you know, so I think, yeah, it'd be great to see something come in to replace Aperture.
All right, guys. I'm going to move on from this. Before we can jump into the Picks of the Week segment, I want to thank our next sponsor for this episode of TWiP, and that's our good friends over at lynda.com. All right, let's jump into the Picks of the Week segment. You guys know the drill. You can pick anything to relate over to the photography or the TWiP audience as long as it is related somehow to photography. Ron Brinkman, I know you got a jet and a couple of minutes here. Tell us what your pick of the week is.
Yeah, I actually just went ahead and kind of dug into sort of what am I using these days on the phone in terms of apps, kind of photo-related apps. And it's kind of interesting because I remember when we, you know, were first doing this, we would always talk about is this app available on Android as well as iOS? And the nice thing is these days it feels like almost everything you pick is going to be available on everything. So just real quick, I'm going to name off a few apps that I've found that I like that just make, you know, not just regular camera apps, but sort of that do something interesting, kind of computational photography related kind of stuff. Just sort of pretty stuff. So let's see. Real quick, there is Lens Flare, which just gives some really nice lens flare kind of effects. You can just kind of pop it onto the on any photos you have. Sort of neat.
Cool.
There's one called Paper Camera. That's kind of one of the better sort of make it look like it's sort of sketchy paper kind of stuff. There's tons of apps like this, but I really like that one. There's one called Tangled. Tangled or Tangled Effects, I guess it is.
Oh, that's cool.
Really trippy, beautiful kind of stuff. I mean, I've just put really bad photos into it, and you come out with the stuff that's, I don't even know how to describe it. It's sort of neon drawn on. It's really fascinating kind of stuff. And then the one that I think is absolutely sort of the best watercolor simulator is called Waterlog.
I have that one. Yeah.
LOGUE, and it's really beautiful. It really captures what a watercolor painting looks like.
I think I spent days when I first got it, like doing it to everything.
Yeah, it's really something. They just nailed it, and I just love that kind of stuff where, you know, it's really taking the camera, beyond what the traditional camera could do, and really putting this extra stuff that really the computer behind it brings to you. So those are kind of my picks.
Yeah, those are killer. And it begs the question, is that the future? I mean, we've been talking about this one singular app that does everything, like a Photoshop replacement. Maybe the replacement is in the components of the replacement. And
I think that's right. I think, we've been saying it for years, but this, the computer plus the camera is really where we're at. There's so much stuff coming out that's just, well, we've barely scratched the surface of what cameras are going to be able to do. I really totally believe that. So there's great stuff coming.
Love it. We'll stick all those links in the notes for this episode. Cool. All right, Steve, Simon, what's your pick of the week?
Cool.
Okay, hear me.
I can hear you.
My
There's a
pick,
little
I'm
breakup.
going way back,
Yeah, go for it, Steve.
and I was excited when I saw this book was being re-released, and it's Bresson. Let me just put this cover up on the screen here so you can see it. And the decisive moments. Cartier-Bresson, arguably, one of the most influential photographers of all time. This is the picture that is often described as the decisive moment. And with all the technology where we're at today, it's still about going out in the world and being able to personalize with the camera kind of what you see and show people kind of what is interesting to you. It's about the contents, and this book is a classic, and they've finally kind of re-released it. The original is very expensive. It's beyond what most people can afford. Definitely beyond what a photographer can afford. So it's nice. This book came out. It's $80, and I actually have a copy of it in front of me now.
Oh,
it's
beautiful.
very true to the original. It comes in a slip cover, and if you look at the Amazon reviews, you're going to see 5 stars and you're going to see 2 stars, because the controversy is that a lot of people were complaining about the quality of the printing, and it's true. I mean, they use the old, Stidel is the company that arguably is producing the most beautiful photographic books today. And they try to sort of stay true to the original. And every original image is there. The cover is by Matisse. There's a lot we can glean from looking at these photographs and learn. But then there's this sort of caption book, and it gives a history of Cartier-Bresson, a history of the book, all these interesting facts that I didn't know about. And it's such a classic book that I think we could, in this futuristic world that we're talking about all this stuff, we go back to this, we look at these images and are reminded that it's really about, the contents, and whatever it is that we use to capture it, it doesn't matter, but it's capturing that counts. So I'm as a street photographer, I'm going back and being re-inspired by the work of Cartier-Bresson in that book.
Love it. Cool. We'll definitely link to that, and I will purchase that. How much does that book cost?
I think it's $80, and
Okay.
it's beautiful. And Stidel is very smart about the quantity of books that they come out with. A lot of their books, like that they do, have become like William Eggleston books. They do a lot of books. They start out being kind of expensive, but then because there's a limited run, if you try and purchase it once the print run is gone, the prices go up astronomically. So they're almost an investment as well.
Supply and demand.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks, Steve. That's a perfect pick for episode 400, no less. Cartier-Bresson. Perfect.
Absolutely.
All right. Next up, Mr. Aaron Mailer. Aaron, what's your pick of the week for episode 400?
My pick is by no means a new product, and a lot of listeners are probably very well familiar with it already, but it just kind of came into my life for the more recently. I finally made the switch last year. I wouldn't say the switch, but added to my arsenal. Started going mirrorless, and added the Panasonic GH4, which I absolutely love, partly for its size. I was getting to the point where with all the traveling I'm doing a lot of the time, I want to shoot when I'm out, but I can't necessarily take my full frame camera with me all the time. And like they say, the camera you have. So the GH4 really attracted me for its 4K video and so on. So downsizing physically in all ways. At this point, my camera bag weighs less than my 5D walk around lens did.
Wow.
And that's carrying all I want to carry as far as my GH4 equivalent lenses, so on and so forth. And with it, I switched to the Black Rapid strap, and I went with the Metro strap. But one of the reasons I like this system, and I'll go ahead and I'll share the same window as you guys have. I don't know if you're seeing that now. Yep. So the Metro is one of their smaller straps, which goes well with a smaller camera body. But part of the reason I did it was not just the convenience of how it holds it at your hip. It's not hard on my shoulder. It's very easy to grab the camera when I use it, but have my both hands free most of the time. But prior to using straps years ago, I was always very much a wrist strap user. And with a much smaller camera body, I like being able to use a wrist strap again in those cases where I don't want the camera dangling, or I'm in a crowd and I want it in my hand, a little more secure. And the nice thing is, as you see in here, it's got this clip system on it, this carabiner type of system for very quickly switching back and forth between the strap that's on my shoulder and the strap that's, this little tiny hand strap I can put on. So I flip back and forth between the two easily. So to me, it's kind of a whole package. It's the Black Rapid strap, it's the wrist strap, but it's also that I'm using a much smaller camera these days.
Love it. Cool. So. And that's for the Metro. It looks like it's $40. Not bad.
Yep. Not bad at all.
Awesome. Cool. All right, man. Thanks. That's a perfect pick. And I also shoot the GH4, so I might have to look at that. I use the Peak Design lens strap system for my cameras, and it I'm happy with it so far. But it's like these cameras, like the camera strap and your cameras are like so intimate. It has to work for you perfectly, or else it detracts from the shooting experience. So
the funny thing is I bought this exactly when I bought the camera. So to me, the whole GH4 experience and the Black Rapid have kind of all gone together too.
Yeah. All right. Looks like Ron Brinkman has stuff to do because he's important. He has to take off.
I must leave you all.
Ron, we're almost at the end of the show. So before you go, why don't you tell folks where you want them to go to check out the stuff that you're working on?
Oh yeah, well, I'm still on the Twitters, so just track me down on Twitter is at Ron Brinkman, RonBrinkmanN. Don't forget the last N.
Yeah.
And anybody that's working on photo app related stuff, ping me. I want to chat a little bit. And it's great seeing you guys. It's been too long.
It has.
Happy back again.
400th, Ron.
We will be in touch. You'll be on TWiP more. Thanks for coming on at the last minute for this one. It's good to see you. I have a tear in my eye. Ron Brinkman back on the show. So go ahead, exit, go do your stuff, and we'll continue with the show and end it in a couple minutes.
Great. All right. Take care, guys. Bye.
All right.
See you, Ron.
All right. Alex Lindsay, what's your pick of the week?
So my pick is I started experimenting with this app called Hydra. I don't know if you've seen Hydra.
No.
So it's basically what it does is you have your iPhone and you can basically take you hold it down and it'll take anywhere from 50 to 100 photos of that, and it creates a higher resolution image. So here's an example. Let me let's see. I'm having fun with the screen share.
100 photos. Jeez, it sounds like gigapixel on steroids.
It is. It doesn't take that big a photo, but if you see, are you seeing my screen here?
Yes, we see it.
So one of the things is if you look at this here, this is a shot of St. Peter's, and one of the things is as we zoom in, you'll see that it gets soft. This is taken at night, handheld. It has a certain look to it.
Yep.
If I go to the next photo beside it, you'll notice that it just looks a lot cleaner. So this is still handheld.
Yeah.
And the thing is that it's not that it is 100 megapixels or something like that, but it is like 25, or whatever. And so what it does is it just makes a much, much better image, a much sharper image than what you're going to get. Now, it doesn't do certain things. People complain about it. It doesn't, it does good still shots. If things are moving, if you're moving, if people are moving, there's all kinds of mirays and things because it's taking lots of photos and mixing them together. But if you're taking a picture of a great sunset or something where there's not a lot of moving parts or not moving very much, I just find if you're out there with your iPhone and you want to take something, I've been testing it a lot. I tested it all through Rome last week and just really enjoyed the results. Again, and especially you put it on a tripod and it seems to know that it's on a tripod and it goes to 100 photos and incredible amounts of detail in a way that you just can't get with your phone. So, for the price, I don't know, it's the price of a coffee or something. It's definitely worth having on your phone and playing with it.
What's this app called again?
This is Hydra. And every time, and here's the worst part is if you've done any of the Avengers stuff, and everything else. I was
going to say that's the evil organization.
Every time you take a good photo with it, you just in the back of your head somewhere just goes, "Hail Hydra." So anyway, because they're not all great, but when they're great, you look at it, you're like, "Hail Hydra."
That's how Alex's mind works.
Yeah. So anyway,
cool.
Anyway, so
awesome.
it's good. Yep.
All right, that's your pick of the week?
That's my pick of the week.
All right, release the screen back to me, and I will share my pick of the week. Mine is actually, do I have it up here? I believe, no, I took it down. Oh, yes, I did. Wait. No, I took it down because it is hard to show on the screen. So my pick of the week is this newest toy, and it kind of has nothing to do with photography, but it kind of does, and it's this thing. Have you guys ever seen one of these? It's called a Kindle. Are you familiar with them?
Oh,
I've heard of it.
Yeah.
So I just got this one yesterday. Actually, I had an older Kindle, but I just got this one. This is the new Kindle Voyage, and I got to tell you, on this thing, I'm just like over the past 24 hours, I've been immersed in the books on this. Now I have an iPad Mini, which I love, and I use it every day. I'm like watching movies on it. I'm doing my numbers documents. I'm planning TWiP episodes, everything on the iPad Mini. I love it. This thing is single purpose. It's a droid that, it's like a robot that only does one thing, and it's to make the reading experience better. That's it. So it's kind of comforting to have a device that all it does and only thing it wants to do is allow you to read better. That's it. And it's a one-trick pony, but it does that one trick very well. So I love it. It's called the Kindle Voyage, and I think it's expensive for this little piece of plastic. It's like $280 or something. But if you read a lot, like I do,
I've heard of this thing called reading. I think I might pick it up.
Words.
I've heard of it.
Alex, start with Hooked on Phonics. That'll get you started.
This week in photography, I like picture books. I like
pictures. Pictures are fun. What's these word things? No, I love it though. It's really cool. I'm really happy with it. And the cool thing about it is because I travel, like lately I've been traveling a lot. This thing goes with me and it's on the plane. It will last 2 weeks easy on one charge,
Right.
So it's like my iPad, I watch a couple movies and, I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel for some power. This thing, granted I'm not watching movies on it, but I'm reading and I don't have to worry about charging it ever. Like I go on a trip, I don't have to worry about it. I get in the bed in the hotel, I'm reading it, put it away. I'm on the plane the next day, I'm reading it. Doesn't care. It's all good. And it syncs, obviously, because it's Amazon. So it syncs up to their cloud. And if I come back later and launch the Kindle app on my iPad, it goes to the right location and the right page, or I can read my books on my phone or whatever. So it's cool. It's a cool experience. I'm excited about it, if you can't tell. So that's the Kindle Voyage. All right, guys, we are at the end of another episode of TWiP. We went about 90 minutes or so. I thought we might go longer, but this is good. So, Steve, I want to throw it to you first. Where can we go to keep up with the new Steve Simon, the street photographer, New York street photographer, Steve Simon?
That's right. Well, I've been talking about my blog for the longest time. Well, guess what? It's finally here. The
Finally!
Photographer blog has landed. Now, it's a work in progress, but I've been wanting to do this for a very long time. So it's up, and so I would encourage people to come. I'm going to be updating it regularly. This is my promise. This was my mission that we for people to come back. Obviously, I've got to keep it going. And I've got a couple of workshops coming up in New York City in May and June. I did my inaugural New York City Street Workshop in November. It was great success. It was just a lot of fun. So you can find out more about it on the blog. And Linda, one of your sponsors, I've got a street photography course with them, and hopefully I'll be doing more stuff with them as well. So that's where I'm at right now.
Well, Steve, I got to congratulate you because I remember teasing you 4 years ago. I think it was 4 years ago about every time you came on, you say, "Yeah, my site's about to
I
launch."
know, I know. Well, it's actually there finally, so you guys can check it out.
Awesome, man. Cool. Congratulations. And welcome
Thanks.
back. Finally, we get to chat.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
All
absolutely.
right.
Are we
Cool.
gonna have to wait for episode 800 to be back again, or
No,
no?
you will be
Okay.
on. You haven't heard the last of Steve Simon.
All right. I'd like to hear.
All right. Aaron Mailer, what about you? Where can people go to see some of the cool stuff you got cooking?
So I'm probably in the opposite situation that Steve finally has his blog launched, and the blog I is pretty much just got cobwebs all over it a lot of the time. So I need to get my butt back in gear. But it does link to a lot of my photography and so on. So my blog is halfpress.com, HALFPRESS, just like you half press your camera, shutter. And but I'm on Twitter probably more than just about anything. So at halfpress, and follow me there. And my tweets, they cover photography and all here and there as well, but there's also just a constant flow of technology and other things in my life too. So it's going to cover a lot of different areas.
I love it. It sounds like the fire behind your drone passion has waned a little bit. Has it? Or are you still hot on that stuff?
I built another one just a few months ago, actually.
When you're building you're like octocopters, right? You're not just doing.
No, actually, I went the opposite direction. I actually scaled down on this one. Much like my GH4, I actually built a smaller drone because I wanted to tinker in that area again as well. So not tiny, but not as big as the Y6 that I was flying before. So
love it. Well, welcome back, man. It's a pleasure to have you on again. And this, like I said with Steve Simon, that this is not the last you'll hear of Aaron Mailer on.
Man, that'd be a good thing. But I appreciate the invite.
Awesome. All right. Last but not least on the list there, Godfather, Mr. Alex Lindsay. What's going on, man? But
I think Alex Lindsay
there's nothing. Like you're like nebulous.
Well, for a long time, up until recently, I wasn't allowed to talk about anything I did, so I just had to just kind of disappear. So I am warming back up. I've been threatening to do some photography podcasts, and so that goes. Hopefully, she's cranking away on some stuff as well.
Cool.
And anyway, so I'm working on that. But really, Alex Lindsay on Twitter is fine. I mean, that there's some photography there. A lot of times there's me complaining about some airline or hotel. How cold it is. So it's not really a photography related podcast or blog, but if you want to listen to me kibitz, Alex Lindsay on Twitter is probably the best place to do that.
Twitter moves mountains when you're a disgruntled traveler. I gotta say, right?
It is very useful. That's all I gotta say. There's a lot of movement can happen quickly.
Yep, especially if you've got one or two followers there, send out a tweet and stuff happens. Say, cool. All right, guys. That's it. So to the listeners, you know the deal. Be sure to visit our website to see this episode and all of our other episodes over at thisweekinphoto.com. My name is Frederick Van Johnson for episode number 400. And with that, for the 400th time, it is time to take that lens cap off.